The school called at 6:42 p.m. on a Tuesday, dismantling my meticulously constructed life in exactly 45 seconds. I was standing at the floor-to-ceiling window of my 40-story office in downtown Seattle, watching the rain blur the city lights into streaks of neon and gray. I held a charcoal pencil in my hand, my fingers stained black, hovering over the final blueprints for the intricate glass atrium of the Sovereign Library project. I am Maya, 28 years old, a partner at one of the most prestigious architectural firms in the Pacific Northwest, and I am a woman who values structure above all else. My life is a series of clean lines and load-bearing walls. I have no debts, no contact with the toxicity of my past, and absolutely unequivocally no children. My phone buzzed against the glass desk, vibrating with an persistence that annoyed me. I picked it up, expecting a contractor or a late-working junior associate. The caller ID read Crestview Elementary. I didn't know a Crestview Elementary. I swiped Answer My Voice Professional and clipped, "This is Maya. Ms. Hart." The voice on the other end was tight, high-pitched, and trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and righteous indignation. "This is Principal Vance from Crestview. We have been calling you for 3 hours. The after-school program ended at 3:30. The janitorial staff is trying to lock up. You need to come get your daughter immediately, or I am calling Child Protective Services." I stopped breathing. The charcoal pencil snapped in my grip, half of it clattering onto the expensive hardwood floor. "Excuse me," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "You have the wrong number. I don't have a daughter." There was a silence on the other end, heavy and judgmental. Then a sigh. "Ms. Hart, please. Do not play games. Lily is sitting right here in my office. She has been crying for her mother since the bell rang. Your number is listed as the primary emergency contact. Your address, the penthouse on 4th and Pike, is listed as the home address. We have your signature on the enrollment forms from this morning. Now are you coming, or am I handing this child over to the police?" My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a chaotic beat that defied the calm architecture of my office. My address, my full name, my phone number. I'm coming. I whispered the words, bypassing my brain. "Don't call the police, I'm coming." I hung up and stared at the phone as if it were a bomb. I didn't have a child. I hadn't spoken to my family in 6 years. I hadn't dated anyone seriously in 3. This was a scam. It had to be a scam. Someone was trying to lure me to a location to rob me. But the fear in the woman's voice, it felt real. And she had my address. I grabbed my keys, my coat, and ran for the elevator. My logic told me to call 911, but my instinct, a primal pull I couldn't explain, told me I had to see the face of this lie. Before I tell you how a 15-minute drive destroyed my entire reality, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. You need to witness the revenge that is coming. The drive to Crestview was a blur of windshield wipers slashing against the torrential rain. My knuckles were white on the leather steering wheel of my Audi. Every worst-case scenario played out in my mind. Identity theft, a stalker, a clerical error of catastrophic proportions. I tried to remember if I had lost my wallet recently, if I had thrown away mail without shredding it. But nothing made sense. Who enrolls a child in school and then abandons them? And why use my name? I pulled into the school parking lot. It was desolate, a flat expanse of wet asphalt under the orange glow of a single street lamp. The school was a brick building, old and imposing, looking like a fortress against the storm. One light was on near the entrance. I parked, took a deep breath that tasted of ozone and fear, and stepped out into the rain. I ran to the glass doors and pounded on them. A moment later, a woman in her 50s wearing a sensible cardigan and an expression of profound disapproval unlocked the door. Principal Vance. She didn't say hello. She just stepped back and crossed her arms. "You're late," she spat. "Inexcusably late." "I told you," I said, water dripping from my hair onto the linoleum floor. "There has been a mistake. I am not a mother. I have never seen this school in my life." "Save it for the social worker," Vance said, turning on her heel. "She's in the nurse's office. She wouldn't stop shivering." I followed her down the hallway. The smell hit me first floor wax wet wool and that distinct dusty scent of pencil shavings. It was the smell of childhood and it made my stomach turn. We reached a door with a frosted glass window. Vance pushed it open. The room was dim lit only by a small desk lamp. Sitting on a paper-covered examination table with her knees pulled up to her chest was a tiny girl. She looked about 5 years old. She was wearing a cheap, thin pink jacket that was too small for her, and her sneakers were scuffed and dirty. Her head was down her face, buried in her knees. Beside her was a backpack shaped like a rabbit, worn and gray with age. "Lily," Vance said, her voice softening slightly. "Your mother is here." The girl's head snapped up. The air left the room. The world stopped spinning. The floor beneath my boots ceased to exist. I was looking in a mirror, a time-traveling mirror. The girl had my hair the same shade of honey blonde that cost me hundreds of dollars to maintain, but hers was matted and unbrushed. She had my nose the slight upturn at the end that I had always been self-conscious about, but it was the eyes that made my knees buckle. I have a condition called heterochromia. My left eye is hazel, my right eye is a piercing deep blue. It is rare. It is specific. It is my trademark. This little girl looked at me with one hazel eye and one blue eye. I grabbed the door frame to keep from collapsing. This wasn't a scam. This wasn't a clerical error. This was biology. But it was impossible. I knew my body. I knew my history. I had never been pregnant. I had never given birth. I was a career woman who had chosen blueprints over baby bottles. The little girl slid off the table. She didn't run to me. She hesitated, fear trembling in her small hands. She looked at me with a mixture of awe and terror, as if she were looking at a ghost. Then she took a tentative step forward. "Mommy," she whispered. The word was a physical blow. It hit me harder than the time a beam fell on my leg at a job site. "No," I whispered back, backing away. "No, I'm not. I don't know you." The little girl's face crumbled. It wasn't a tantrum. It was a silent, devastating collapse of hope. Tears spilled from those mismatched eyes, rolling down cheeks that were smudged with dirt. "Grandma said you would come," she choked out. "Grandma said you wanted me now. Grandma." I looked at Principal Vance. "Who brought her here? Who enrolled her?" "Oh," Vance scoffed, walking over to her desk and picking up a clipboard. "You did, Ms. Hart. Or at least a woman claiming to be your representative did, carrying paperwork signed by you. She said you were moving back to the city today and that the child needed to start immediately." She shoved the clipboard at me. I looked at the enrollment form. My eyes scanned the lines. Student name, Lily Hart. Date of birth, April 14th, 2019. Mother Maya Hart. And then I saw the signature at the bottom. Maya Hart. It was a good forgery. To a stranger, it looked authentic. But I am an architect. I look for the flaws in the structure. I looked at the capital M. It had a flourish, a tiny loop at the peak. I don't loop my M's. I make them sharp, angular. But I knew who did loop them. I knew that handwriting better than my own because I had spent 18 years trying to escape the person who wrote it. It was my mother's handwriting, Patricia. The room spun. My mother, the woman who had called me a worthless investment when I chose architecture school over marrying a rich doctor. The woman I had blocked on every device 6 years ago. The woman who worshipped the ground my younger sister Isabella walked on. Patricia had forged my signature. Patricia had enrolled this child. Patricia had told this child that I was her mother. Who dropped her off? I demanded, my voice shaking with a rage that was starting to boil over the confusion. Was it an older woman? Blonde excessive jewelry, smells like Chanel number, 5 in judgment. Vance blinked, surprised by the specificity. No, it was a man, heavy set, wearing a chauffeur's cap. He dropped her at the curb and drove off, a black sedan. My father's driver, Ms. Hart. Vance interrupted, checking her watch. I don't know what kind of family drama is happening here, but I need you to take your daughter. We are closed. If you don't take her, I am calling the authorities. Abandonment is a felony. I looked at the form again, then I looked at the girl. Lily. She was shivering again, standing alone in the middle of the room, clutching the strap of her rabbit backpack. She looked so small, so discarded. If I left her here, she would go into the system, foster care, strangers. And if she really had my eyes, if she was somehow impossibly connected to me, I couldn't do that. I couldn't leave a child who looked like my mirror image to the mercy of the state. "I'll take her," I said, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. "Give me the form." I signed the release. My hand shook so badly the pen tore through the paper. I wasn't accepting maternity. I was accepting custody of a mystery. I was accepting a crime scene. "Come on," I said to Lily. I didn't know how to talk to children. I spoke to her like a client. "We are leaving now." Lily nodded, wiping her nose on her sleeve. She walked over to me but didn't take my hand. She walked a foot behind me, keeping her head down, like a servant, like she was trained to be invisible. We walked out into the rain. I unlocked the Audi. "Get in the back," I said. She climbed in her wet sneakers, squeaking on the pristine cream leather seats. I didn't care. I got in the front and locked the doors. The sound of the locks clicking shut felt like the final seal on my old life. I drove. The silence in the car was suffocating. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror. She was just sitting there, staring out the window at the rain, her hands folded politely in her lap. She was too still for a child. It was unnatural. "Are you hungry?" I asked, because that's what you ask humans, right? "Yes, ma'am," she whispered. "Ma'am, not mommy anymore." She had sensed my rejection. The formality broke my heart in a way I didn't expect. "We'll get food," I said, "and my name is Maya. You can call me Maya." "Okay, Maya." I ordered takeout from a high-end Italian place near my apartment, pasta breadstick soup. I didn't know what 5-year-olds ate. I assumed carbohydrates were safe. We took the private elevator up to the penthouse. When the doors opened, Lily gasped. My apartment is a masterpiece of minimalism. White marble floors, glass walls, steel furniture, abstract art. It is cold, expensive, and definitely not child-proof. Lily stood at the edge of the rug, afraid to step on the white wool. "You can walk on it," I said, tossing my keys on the counter. "Take off your shoes and jacket." She obeyed instantly, lining her dirty sneakers up perfectly parallel to the wall. She hung her jacket on the coat rack, stretching on her tiptoes to reach it. She was disciplined, militant. I plated the pasta at the kitchen island. She sat on the high bar stool, her legs dangling feet above the floor. She ate voraciously, shoving the pasta into her mouth as if she hadn't eaten all day. She probably hadn't. I poured myself a glass of wine, a large one. I leaned against the counter and watched her. I needed answers. "Lily," I said gently. She froze a forkful of pasta halfway to her mouth. She looked terrified, like I was about to hit her. "You're not in trouble. I just need to ask you some questions." "Okay." She nodded slowly, lowering the fork. "Where did you live before today? Did you live with Grandma Patricia?" She nodded. "Yes, in the big house with the gates. My parents' estate in the Highlands." "And did you live there a long time?" "Always," she said, "since I was a baby." "And why?" I took a sip of wine to steady my nerves. "Why did Grandma bring you to school today? Why didn't she pick you up?" Lily looked down at her plate. Her lower lip trembled. "Because of the baby," she whispered. My brow furrowed. "What baby?" "The new baby." Lily said, her voice barely audible. "Auntie Isabella's baby." Grandma said. She sniffled, a tear falling into her pasta. "Grandma said now that the real baby is coming. They don't need the practice one anymore. She said I have to go to my real mom because there isn't room for two." The glass of wine slipped from my hand. It hit the marble floor and shattered, sending shards of crystal and a spray of red wine everywhere. The red liquid pooled on the white floor like blood. I didn't move. I couldn't feel my fingers. Auntie Isabella. My sister. The golden child. The one who had everything I didn't. My parents' love, their money, their approval. But the one thing Isabella didn't have was fertility. I remembered the gossip from distant relatives over the years. Isabella had been trying for a baby for a decade. IVF failures, miscarriages, She was barren. And now, suddenly, there was a new baby coming. A real baby. And Lily. Lily was the practice one. The horror of it washed over me cold and slimy. They had raised this child, this girl who looked exactly like me, kept her hidden in their estate for 5 years, and now the moment Isabella finally succeeded in getting pregnant, they had discarded Lily like an outdated prototype. But that didn't explain the eyes. That didn't explain the face. I looked at Lily, who had jumped off the stool and was trying to pick up the broken glass with her bare hands, crying, I'm sorry, don't be mad." "Stop!" I yelled, rushing over and grabbing her hands before she cut herself. She flinched, curling into a ball, expecting a blow. I froze. I looked at this terrified little girl cowering in my kitchen. My parents had done this. They had terrified her. They had trained her to be a disposable object. I pulled her into my arms. It was awkward, stiff, but I held her. She smelled like lavender laundry detergent, the expensive brand my mother imported from France. The scent triggered a violent memory of my childhood, of feeling small and unworthy in that big house. "I'm not mad," I whispered into her matted hair. "I'm not mad at you, Lily." I picked her up and carried her away from the broken glass. I set her on the living room sofa. "Stay here, I'm going to make a phone call." I walked to the window, my hands shaking. I dialed the one person I trusted, Leo, my business partner and the most vicious lawyer in Seattle. "Maya," he answered on the first ring. "It's late. Is the library render done?" "Leo," I said, my voice sounding like grinding stones. "I need you to come to my apartment now." "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "No," I said, looking at the reflection of the little girl in the glass. "I need you to bring a DNA kit and a private investigator." "Maya, what is going on?" "My parents," I said, the rage finally crystallizing into something sharp and deadly. "They didn't just forge my signature, Leo. I think they stole something much more valuable." I looked at Lily's eyes again, the hazel and the blue. 6 years ago, just before I went no contact, I had an emergency surgery. Appendicitis, they said. I was under for hours. My parents had handled all the paperwork. They had been surprisingly helpful, hovering over me, bringing me juice, smiling that shark-like smile. Appendicitis. I touched my stomach where a tiny faded scar sat just below my hip bone. "Leo." I whispered into the phone, tears of pure fury burning my eyes. "Get over here. I think I know where she came from, and if I'm right, I'm going to burn their entire world down." Leo arrived 20 minutes later. He didn't knock. He used the emergency key code I had given him 5 years ago when we founded Hart and Sterling Architects. He burst through the door, soaking wet, carrying a leather briefcase that looked like it contained nuclear codes. Leo is 30 sharp as a scalpel and the only person in the world who knows the full extent of the damage my family inflicted on me before I escaped. He stopped dead in the entryway, his eyes locking onto the small figure curled up on my white sofa. Lily was asleep. She looked like a fallen angel in dirty denim, her small hand clutching a throw pillow so tight her knuckles were white. "Jesus, Maya," Leo whispered, the color draining from his face. He looked from the child to me, then back to the child. "I thought you were exaggerating. I thought maybe it was just a resemblance." "It's not a resemblance, Leo," I said, my voice steady but cold. I was vibrating with adrenaline. "It's a clone. Look at the scar above her lip." Leo walked closer, his expensive loafers silent on the marble. He leaned down, studying the sleeping girl. He saw the faint white line. He stood up, running a hand through his damp hair. "That's your scar. You got that when you fell off the swing set at your grandmother's house. I remember you telling me the story." "She has it," I said, "and she has the eyes. Heterochromia, hazel and blue. The odds of that happening randomly to a child who was dropped off by my father's driver, 0. Leo set his briefcase on the kitchen island. He opened it and pulled out a box. "I brought the kit. We need buccal swabs. But Maya, if what you're saying is true, if this is biology..." He hesitated, looking at me with deep concern. The timeline doesn't work. I've known you for 6 years. You've never been pregnant. I would know. I know I haven't. I snapped, pouring myself another glass of wine, my hand shaking. That's why we need to dig. Start with the appendectomy. Leo froze. He looked up at me. The surgery. The one right before you moved out. August 14th, 6 years ago. I recited. The date was branded into my memory. I was 22. I was visiting them for the weekend, trying to make peace one last time. I woke up with severe abdominal pain. My mother, she was so panicked. She rushed me to a private clinic, not the ER, a private clinic in the hills, St. Jude's. I closed my eyes, the memory washing over me like a wave of nausea. I remember the doctor, Dr. Aris. He said my appendix was about to burst. He put a mask on my face. The gas smelled sweet. When I woke up, I was in so much pain, different pain, lower, deep in my pelvis. They told me it was complications from the rupture. I was in bed for 2 weeks. My mother took care of me. She was oddly nice. She brought me soup. She brushed my hair. It was the only time in my life she acted like a mother. Leo was typing furiously on his laptop. St. Jude's Clinic, Dr. Ares. Okay, I'm into their database. I have a backdoor from a malpractice suit I handled last year. His eyes scanned the screen, reflecting the blue light. His jaw tightened. Maya, tell me. There is no record of an appendectomy for Maya Hart on August 14th. I felt the room tilt. What? I see the admission, Leo said, his voice turning into a growl. Patient Maya Hart, admitted for elective oocyte retrieval. Procedure code 58970. The glass in my hand didn't break this time. I set it down with a terrifying calmness. Oocyte retrieval, egg harvesting. They stole my eggs, I whispered. The horror was so absolute it felt like a physical weight crushing my chest. They drugged me, they cut me open, and they stole parts of my body. There's more, Leo said, reading further, his face twisting in disgust. Consent forms signed by Patricia Hart acting as medical proxy due to patient incapacitation, and authorization for fertilization, sperm donor anonymous, designated carrier. He stopped. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a pity I hated. Who carried her? I asked. Isabella. No, Leo said. Surrogate, a woman named Elena Ross, paid $50,000, but the intended parents listed on the birth certificate are Patricia and Robert Hart. I walked over to the window and pressed my forehead against the cold glass. Below me, the city of Seattle churned on, oblivious to the crime that had been committed in a sterile clinic in the hills. They had harvested me like livestock. They had taken my genetic material to create a child, not to love her, but to... Why? Why, I asked the reflection in the glass. Isabella was married by then. She was trying to get pregnant. Why didn't she just use a donor? Because Isabella is a narcissist, Leo said, closing the laptop with a snap. And so is your mother. They didn't want a random donor baby. They wanted the line. They wanted the family genes. And since Isabella was infertile and you were the scapegoat, I was the spare parts bin. I finished. They used me to build a baby for Isabella to play with. But why dump her now? Leo asked, gesturing to the sleeping girl. She's 5. They kept her for 5 years. Why drop her at a school today with your contact info? We need the PI, what I said. Call Karis. Karis was an ex-detective who charged $400 an hour and was worth every cent. He met us at the apartment an hour later, looking like a noir film character in a trench coat that smelled of rain and cheap tobacco. He didn't blink when he saw Lily sleeping on the couch. He just took the coffee I offered him and opened a manila folder. You were right to call, Karis said, his voice gravelly. I've been tracking your family's financials and movements for the last 3 hours. It's busy over there in the Highlands. Tell me, I said. Your sister Isabella, Karis said, sliding a photo across the marble island. She's pregnant. I looked at the photo. It was taken recently, likely by a telephoto lens. Isabella was standing in the garden of my parents' estate. She was wearing a flowing white dress, her hands cradling a very large, very real baby bump. She looked radiant, smug. 8 months along, Kara said. It's being called a miracle in their social circles. Apparently, after 10 years of IVF failure, she conceived naturally. Or at least that's the story. It's a boy. The pieces of the puzzle slammed together with the force of a wrecking ball. A boy, I whispered. The heir. Exactly, Kara said. And here's the kicker. 2 days ago, your father, Robert, liquidated a trust fund, the Lily Education Trust. He drained it, transferred the funds to a new account labeled Isabella Baby Nursery. Yesterday, the nanny was fired. Today, the driver dropped the girl at the school. I looked at the photo of my pregnant sister. She looked so happy, so complete, and she had achieved that completeness by erasing the existence of the child they had created from my stolen body. She was a placeholder. I said, my voice shaking with a rage so potent it felt like poison in my blood. Lily. She was a placeholder, a practice baby, something for Isabella and my mother to play dolls with, until Isabella could produce the real thing. And now that the prince is coming, the pauper has to go. They didn't just dump her, Leo added, his lawyer brain working fast. They tried to frame you by putting your name on the school forms, by using your address. If anything happened to Lily, if she got hurt or lost, you would be the one charged with negligence. They were trying to send her to you and destroy your reputation in one move. 2 birds, 1 stone, Karis agreed. Get rid of the unwanted kid, ruin the scapegoat daughter. I looked over at the sofa. Lily was stirring. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. She saw the 2 strange men and shrank back against the cushions, making herself small. I walked over to her. I sat on the edge of the coffee table, lowering myself to her eye level. Lily, I said softly. I fell asleep, she whispered, terrified. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I won't do it again. You can sleep whenever you want, I said, my heart breaking for the 100th time that night. Lily, I need to ask you something. Did Auntie Isabella talk to you before you left? Lily nodded. She picked at a loose thread on her jeans. She told me that her tummy had the real baby now, and that the real baby needs my room and my toys. She looked up at me, her mismatched eyes full of tears. She said I was just alone, like a library book, and now I have to go back. A library book. I stood up. I walked to the kitchen. I gripped the edge of the granite counter so hard I thought I might crack the stone. Leo, I said, don't call the police. Maya, Leo warned, this is kidnapping, this is medical rape. We need the authorities. If we call the police now, I said, turning to face him, my father will use his connections. He'll claim I'm crazy. He'll claim I donated the eggs willingly and now I'm having a breakdown. He has money. He has judges in his pocket. It will be a messy year-long battle and Lily will be dragged through the system. Then what do you want to do? I want to kill them, I said calmly. Not physically. I want to kill their lives. I want to kill their reputation. I want to kill their standing in this city. I want them to have nothing left but the shame. Okay, Leo said, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. I like where this is going. How, Karis, I said to the PI, what is the next big event on their calendar? My mother never lets a milestone pass without a gala. Karis flipped a page in his notebook. This Saturday, 2 days from now, the royal baby shower. It's being held at the estate, catered by Divine Bites, 300 guests. The mayor is invited. It's supposed to be the grand debut of the miracle heir. Saturday, I repeated. Perfect. I looked at Leo. Draft the papers. I want a petition for full custody based on genetic maternity and abandonment. I want a civil suit for the theft of biological material, and I want a lien on their property for unpaid child support for the last 5 years, calculated at the highest bracket. Consider it done, Leo said. But how do you want to serve them? A process server. No, I said, looking at the photo of Isabella smiling in her white dress. I'm going to serve them myself. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I called my partners and told them I had a family emergency. For the first time in my life, it was true. I took Lily shopping. She was terrified of the department store. She walked close to my leg, flinching whenever a salesperson asked if she needed help. She was wearing the clothes I had found in her backpack, worn leggings and a t-shirt that said "Grateful" in peeling glitter. "Lily," I said, stopping in the middle of the children's section at Nordstrom. "You can pick out anything you want." She looked at the racks of colorful dresses, the sparkly shoes, the soft coats. She put her hands behind her back. "Grandma says I don't need new things. She says I ruin them." I knelt down in the middle of the aisle, ignoring the shoppers around us. "Grandma isn't here. I am here. And I say you need clothes that fit. You are not alone, Lily. You are mine. And my daughter does not wear clothes that make her feel small." She looked at me, her eyes widening. "Your daughter?" "Yes," I said firmly. "We did a test, a science test. You came from me. You are part of me." She touched the scar on her lip, then reached out and touched the matching one on mine. A small, tentative smile broke through her fear. "Okay," she whispered. "We bought everything. We bought dresses that spun when she twirled. We bought rain boots with frogs on them. We bought a winter coat made of soft pink wool. We bought pajamas with astronauts on them because she told me she liked the moon." By the time we left, she was holding my hand, not grabbing my leg out of fear, but holding my hand. We went back to the apartment. Leo was there, surrounded by stacks of paper. "The expedited DNA results are back," he said, holding up a document. 99.999% maternity probability. You are the mother, the Dr. Eris. I put a little pressure on him. Told him I was filing a complaint with the medical board about the appendectomy. He cracked in 5 minutes. He emailed me the real consent forms. He handed me a PDF printout. I looked at it. Patient consent for egg retrieval. Signed Patricia Hart proxy. Reason for proxy patient mental instability. They had labeled me unstable. That was how they got around the consent laws. They claimed I was having a mental health crisis during my appendectomy and that my mother had power of attorney. It was a lie built on a lie. "I have the audio too," Leo said. "I recorded the call with Eris. He admits your mother paid him an extra 50 grand under the table to keep it quiet." "Good," I said. "Burn it onto a flash drive and connect it to your tablet." "Why?" "Because," I said, walking to the window and looking toward the highlands where my family sat in their mansion preparing for their party. "We are going to a baby shower." I picked up my phone. I dialed the number I hadn't called in 6 years. It rang 4 times, then a voice answered. Cool, dismissive, arrogant. "Hello." "Hello, Mother," I said. Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. "Maya. Why are you calling this number? I thought you were finding yourself in the city." "I heard about Isabella," I said, forcing my voice to sound meek, broken. "I heard she's finally pregnant." "Yes," Patricia said, her voice dripping with triumph. "A miracle, a real blessing. Finally a grandchild worth celebrating." The insult stung, but I let it slide. I wanted to extend an olive branch, Mom. I know we haven't spoken. But a baby, it changes things. I wanted to drop by, bring a gift. "Drop by." Patricia laughed. It was a cruel sound. "We are having a very exclusive event on Saturday, the shower. I don't think you'd fit in, Maya. You were always so dreary. Please." I begged, channeling the desperate daughter I used to be. "I just want to see her. I have a gift. Something valuable. From the firm. A design for the nursery." Patricia paused. She loved free things. She loved expensive things. And she loved the idea of me crawling back to her begging for scraps of inclusion. "Fine," she sighed. "Saturday at 2 o'clock. But come to the back entrance. And don't dress like a pauper. This is high society, Maya. Try not to embarrass us." "I won't," I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "I'll be unforgettable." I hung up. I looked at Lily, who was sitting on the floor building a tower out of blocks I had bought her. She was humming a song. She looked happy. "Lily," I said. She looked up, beaming. "Yes, Mommy." The word Mommy didn't hurt this time. It felt like armor. "Do you want to play a game?" I asked. "A game called The Truth." "How do you play?" she asked. "We go to a party." I said, walking over and kissing her forehead. And we tell everyone exactly who you are, and we make sure the bad people never, ever hurt you again. She nodded solemnly. Okay, I'm brave, like the astronauts. Yes, I said, you are. Saturday came. The sky was gray, threatening a storm. Perfect. I dressed Lily in the finest dress we had bought, a deep velvet blue that matched her right eye. I braided her hair so it looked exactly like mine. I put on a tailored white suit, sharp, architectural, a power suit. I looked like a CEO. I looked like an executioner. Leo drove. We pulled up to the gate of the estate. The security guard checked his list. Heart, Leo said. Family. The gate opened. We drove up the winding driveway, past the manicured lawns, past the fountains. The driveway was filled with luxury cars, Bentleys, Porsches, Mercedes. The entire social register of Seattle was here. We parked. I took a deep breath. I grabbed the file folder Leo had prepared. Leo grabbed the tablet. Ready? Leo asked. No, I said, guess, but let's do it anyway. I opened the back door. Lily hopped out. She looked at the big house and stiffened. She grabbed my hand, squeezing tight. It's okay, I whispered. You're with me now. They can't touch you. We walked to the front door. Not the back entrance. The front. The butler opened the door. He recognized me. His eyes widened. Miss Maya, you were told. Move, Charles, I said, stepping past him. We walked through the marble foyer. I could hear the sounds of the party from the garden terrace, clinking glasses, laughter string music. The smell of expensive perfume wafted through the air. We stepped out onto the terrace. It was a sea of pastels, pink and blue balloons, white roses everywhere, a banner that read, Welcome, Baby James. And there, in the center of it all, sat Isabella. She was on a white wicker throne surrounded by gifts. She was laughing, her hand resting on her belly. My mother stood beside her, holding a glass of champagne, looking down at her golden child with adoration. My father was shaking hands with the mayor. For a moment, no one saw us. We were ghosts at the feast. Then the music stopped. The string quartet trailed off as the violinist noticed us. A hush rippled through the crowd. Heads turned. Patricia looked up. Her smile faltered, then hardened into a scowl. Isabella followed her gaze. When she saw me, she looked annoyed. But then she saw who was holding my hand. Isabella's face went white. Chalk white. The glass in her hand tilted, spilling champagne onto her dress. My mother froze. She looked from me to Lily, then back to me. Her eyes darted around the crowd, assessing the damage. Maya, Patricia hissed, stepping forward, her voice low and threatening. What are you doing here? I told you the back entrance. And why did you bring her? Who is that? A woman nearby whispered. Is that the other sister? And who is the child? Another asked. My God, she looks just like Maya. I didn't whisper. I didn't cower. I walked straight into the center of the terrace, pulling Lily with me. The crowd parted. I stopped 10 feet from Isabella's throne. Hello, Isabella, I said, my voice projecting clearly to the 300 guests. Hello, Mother, Father. Get out, Robert growled, stepping forward. You are making a scene. A scene. I laughed. It was a sharp, jagged sound. No, Robert, I'm not making a scene. I'm making a correction. I looked at Isabella. She was trembling. She knew. She knew the game was up. You forgot something at school on Tuesday, I said to Isabella. I looked down at Lily, or rather someone. I don't know what you're talking about, Isabella stammered, clutching her belly. She's the housekeeper's child. We sent her away. The housekeeper's child, I repeated, raising my voice. That's funny because she has my eyes and she has my scar. And according to the DNA test I ran yesterday, I held up the file folder. And she is my daughter. Gasps erupted from the crowd. The mayor leaned in, looking interested. And do you know how I have a daughter, Isabella? I continued, stepping closer. Because I certainly didn't carry her. I didn't give birth to her. Security, Patricia screamed. Get her out of here. She's mentally ill. She's having an episode. 2 security guards started to move toward me. Leo stepped in front of them. He is tall, broad, and looks very much like a lawyer who will sue you into oblivion. He held up a hand. I wouldn't touch her if I were you, unless you want to be named as accessories to kidnapping. The guards hesitated. Leo, I said, the screen. Leo tapped his tablet. He had hacked into the AV system used for the gender reveal slideshow. Suddenly, the giant screen behind Isabella, the one that was supposed to show a sonogram of baby James, flickered. The image changed. It was the consent form, blown up to 10 feet tall. Patient Maya Hart. Procedure egg retrieval. Proxy Patricia Hart. 6 years ago, I said, turning to the crowd. My parents drugged me. They told me I was having an appendectomy. Instead, they harvested my eggs, without my consent, without my knowledge. The crowd was silent, deadly silent. The image on the screen changed. It was the birth certificate of Lily, Mother Maya Hart forged, father unknown. They created an embryo. I said, my voice shaking with emotion now. They hired a surrogate, and they made this little girl. Why? Because Isabella was barren. They wanted a heart baby, so they stole one from me. I pointed at Lily, who was standing tall, brave, like an astronaut. They raised her in a closet for 5 years. They treated her like a pet. And this week, when Isabella finally got pregnant with her miracle, I pointed at Isabella's belly. They threw my daughter away. They dropped her at a school she had never been to with a mother she had never met, and they drove away. Liar! Isabella screamed, standing up. You're a jealous, barren liar. You wanted her. You're trying to steal my spotlight. Leo, I said. The audio. Leo tapped the tablet. Dr. Eris's voice boomed over the speakers, clear and damning. Look, Mr. Sterling, I don't want trouble. Patricia Hart paid me $50,000 to keep the retrieval off the books. She said the younger daughter needed an egg, and the older one wouldn't give it up. She signed the proxy. It was irregular, but they are a powerful family. The silence on the terrace was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. Isabella's husband, a decent man named Mark, who came from old money, stood up. He looked at Isabella. He looked at the screen. He looked at Lily. Is this true? He asked, his voice breaking. Isabella, you told me she was adopted. You told me she was a distant cousin's orphan. Mark, don't listen to her. Isabella sobbed, reaching for him. She's trying to ruin us. Mark looked at Lily. He saw the resemblance. He saw the truth. He pulled his hand away from Isabella. He looked at Patricia and Robert with pure disgust. You people are sick, he whispered. He turned and walked away. Mark, Isabella screamed. She tried to chase him, but the stress was too much. She doubled over, clutching her stomach. My baby, my baby. Chaos erupted. People were shouting. Someone was calling 911. I didn't move. I stood in the eye of the hurricane, holding my daughter's hand. It's over, Mother, I said to Patricia, who was standing there pale and shaking, her social standing, evaporating like mist. You wanted a show, you got one. I picked up Lily. She buried her face in my neck. Let's go home, I whispered to her. We walked back through the house, leaving the ruins of the Hart dynasty behind us. But I knew this wasn't the end. The police were coming. The lawyers were coming. And I was just getting started. The sound of sirens cutting through the heavy, humid air of the highlands wasn't just a noise. It was a frequency I had been waiting to hear for 6 years. It started as a low whine in the distance, barely audible over the hysterical sobbing of my sister and the shocked murmurs of 300 socialites, but it grew rapidly into a deafening wail that shattered the last remnants of the royal baby shower. I stood still, my hand gripping Lily's small, trembling fingers. I felt like a conductor who had just signaled the crescendo of a violent symphony. Beside me, Leo checked his watch, his face a mask of professional indifference. Right on time, he murmured. I told the chief of police that there was an active kidnapping situation involving a minor and a high-flight risk suspect. It tends to speed things up. Isabella was still on the ground, her white maternity dress stained with champagne and grass, clutching her stomach. Mark, Mark, come back! She shrieked, her voice raw. But Mark was gone. His Porsche had roared down the driveway moments ago, leaving tire marks on the pristine pavement. He had chosen dignity over the disaster my family called a legacy. My mother, Patricia, finally snapped out of her paralysis. She looked at the guests, the mayor, the CEOs, the charity board members who were all backing away phones, out recording the implosion of the Hart dynasty. Her narcissism, a survival mechanism made of titanium, kicked in. "Stop recording," she commanded, her voice shrill. She pointed a manicured finger at me. "This is a misunderstanding. My daughter, Maya, is unwell. She has a history of delusions. That audio was faked. It's AI. You know how dangerous technology is these days." She marched toward me, her eyes wild. "You ungrateful little witch," she hissed low enough so the crowd couldn't hear, but loud enough to freeze my blood. "Fix this. Tell them it's a prank. Tell them you're off your meds. Do it now, or I will make sure you never work in this city again." I looked down at her. For the first time in my life, she didn't look like a giant. She looked like a desperate aging woman in a dress that was too tight, trying to hold back the tide with a teaspoon. "I don't need meds, Mother," I said, my voice calm, projecting effortless authority. "And I don't need your permission to work. I own my firm, I own my life, and as of 10 minutes ago..." I nodded toward the driveway where 4 squad cars were screeching to a halt, blue and red lights flashing against the gray sky. I own the narrative. The police didn't knock. They swarmed. Uniformed officers poured through the garden gate led by Detective Miller, a man Leo knew and trusted. They moved with a precision that contrasted sharply with the chaotic luxury of the party. "Robert Hart, Patricia Hart, Isabella Hart," Miller's voice boomed. My father, who had been trying to blend into a group of investors near the buffet, straightened his tie. "I am Robert Hart. This is private property. Who authorized this intrusion?" "You are under arrest," Miller said, ignoring the posturing. "Charges of kidnapping, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery of medical documents, and child abandonment." "Ridiculous," Robert sputtered as an officer grabbed his arm. "Do you know who I am? I play golf with the commissioner." "The commissioner signed the warrant, sir," Miller said dryly. "Turn around, hands behind your back." The visual was delicious. Robert Hart, the man who had terrified me with a single glance for 2 decades, was spun around and slammed gently but firmly against a trellis covered in white roses. The click of the handcuffs was audible even over the wind. Patricia screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear, it was a scream of offended royalty. "Get your hands off him! This is a mistake, Maya, tell them!" She lunged toward me, her hands clawed, intent on physical damage. 2 officers intercepted her. One grabbed her wrist, twisting it behind her back. "Patricia Hart, you are under arrest," the officer recited. "No, no." She thrashed her Chanel heels, slipping on the wet grass. "I am the victim here. She stole my granddaughter. She's the thief. We have the DNA, Mrs. Hart," Miller said, walking over to her. "And we have the doctor. He's in custody. He gave us everything. The payments, the forged proxy, the emails where you discussed disposing of the prototype child." Prototype. The word hung in the air, heavy and sick. The crowd gasped. The socialites who had eaten my mother's canapés and drank her wine were now looking at her as if she were a monster. And she was. Isabella was the last to fall. She was still on the ground, wailing. When the officers approached her, she tried to crawl backward. "I'm pregnant. You can't arrest me. I'm pregnant." "We have an ambulance en route, ma'am." The officer said, not touching her, but standing over her. "But you are under custody. You will be transported to St. Mary's under police guard." "It hurts," Isabella screamed, clutching her belly. A gush of fluid soaked the white dress. Her water broke. The stress, the shock, the rage it had sent her into labor. "My baby," she sobbed. "I want my mom, Mom." Patricia cuffed, and being dragged toward the squad cars, looked back. But she didn't look at Isabella with concern. She looked at the scene with calculation. "Call the lawyers," she screamed at Robert. "Call the firm, don't say anything." She didn't ask if Isabella was okay. She didn't ask about the baby. She only cared about the defense strategy. Isabella saw it. For a split second, through the pain and the hysteria, I saw the realization hit her eyes. The golden child saw that she, too, was just an asset, valued only when she was winning, useless when she was broken. The paramedics arrived, loading Isabella onto a stretcher. She writhed in pain, screaming curses at me as they wheeled her past. "I hope you die, Maya. I hope you burn. She was just a spare. She was nothing." I covered Lily's ears, pressing her face into my waist. "Don't listen," I whispered. "It's just noise. The trash is being taken out." As the ambulance wailed away and the squad cars loaded my parents into the back seats, Leo stepped forward. He walked up to the head of the security detail my father had hired for the party. "I am Leo Sterling, attorney for Maya Hart," Leo announced loud enough for the remaining staff to hear. He pulled a thick packet of documents from his briefcase. "This is a court order signed by Judge Holloway 20 minutes ago as part of the civil suit for damages regarding medical malpractice fraud and unpaid child support calculated over 5 years for a high-net-worth individual. The court has granted a preliminary freezing of assets." He handed the papers to the confused security guard. "This property is now a secured asset in pending litigation. No one enters. No one leaves with anything other than personal keys and identification. The staff is dismissed. The house is sealed." My father, watching from the window of the squad car, went purple. He slammed his head against the glass, screaming soundlessly. He loved that house more than he loved his children, and I had just taken it. "Come on," I said to Lily. The rain finally began to fall, a soft, cleansing drizzle. "We're done here." We walked back to the car. The adrenaline that had sustained me for 48 hours began to ebb, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. But as I buckled Lily into her car seat, she looked at me. Her mismatched eyes were wide, but they weren't scared anymore. They were curious. "Did we win the game?" she asked softly. I looked at the house, dark and surrounded by police tape. I looked at the tire tracks where my family had been dragged away. "Yes, baby," I said, kissing her forehead. "We won, but now comes the hard part. Now we have to build something new." The next 3 days were a blur of legal bureaucracy and emotional triage. I didn't go back to the office. I turned my penthouse into a fortress. The news cycle was vicious. Hart dynasty crumbles. Socialite arrested for genetic theft. The secret daughter, how a prominent family hid a child for 5 years. My phone rang incessantly. Reporters, old friends who had ignored me for years, distant relatives, claiming they always knew something was wrong. I blocked them all. The only people allowed in my world were Leo and Karis. On Tuesday morning, Leo sat at my dining table looking exhausted but triumphant. "The arraignment is in an hour," he said, sipping black coffee. "Bail is set at $5 million each for your parents. They might post it, but their assets are frozen, so they'll have to leverage dirty money or call in favors. It'll be hard." "And Isabella?" I asked. I was making pancakes for Lily. It was a mundane task that kept my hands busy and my mind from spiraling. "She gave birth," Leo said quietly. "A boy. Healthy, 7 pounds. She's still in the hospital under guard. The baby, James, is currently in the custody of Child Protective Services until Mark decides what he wants to do." "Mark called me," I said, flipping a pancake. Leo looked up. "When?" "Last night. He was drunk, crying. He said he didn't know. He swore he thought Lily was the housekeeper's niece that they were sponsoring. He said Isabella told him she was charity." "Do you believe him?" "I do," I said. "Mark is weak, but he's not evil. He's a man who liked the shiny surface of my sister and never bothered to check the foundation. Now that the house has collapsed, he's just lost." "He's filing for divorce," Leo noted, "and for full custody of the baby. He wants nothing to do with the Harts." "Good for him," I said. "What about the plea deals?" "They aren't offering any yet," Leo said. "Your father is still trying to bluster his way out. He's claiming he had your verbal consent 6 years ago, and the paperwork was just a formality he mishandled. He's trying to paint you as the unstable one again. He told his lawyer to request a psychiatric evaluation for you." I laughed. It was a cold sound. "Let him. I'm the sanest person in this zip code. I have the receipts, Leo. I have the calendar showing I was working 80-hour weeks when I was supposedly unstable. I have the performance reviews. I have the awards. I know. Leo grinned. That's why it's fun. Watching them flail is like watching a fish on dry land. But Maya, there's something else. What? Patricia wants to see you. I froze. The spatula hovered over the pan. No. She's claiming she has information, Leo said, about Lily, medical history. Things you need to know. She refuses to tell her lawyer. She says she'll only tell you. It was a trap. I knew it was a trap. Patricia Hart didn't have maternal concern. She had leverage. But the mention of medical history terrified me. Lily was created in a lab by a crooked doctor. What if there were genetic issues? What if they had manipulated her? Fine, I said, turning off the stove. Set it up, but not in an interrogation room. I want her to see me free. I'll go to the holding facility. The visitation room at the county jail was a stark contrast to the country club. It was gray cold and smelled of bleach and despair. I sat on a metal stool, Leo standing behind me like a sentinel. The door buzzed and my mother was led in. She was wearing an orange jumpsuit. It was ill-fitting and garish. Her hair, usually a helmet of hairspray and blonde highlights, was flat and greasy. She had no makeup on. Without her armor, she looked 20 years older. Her face was lined with rage and sleeplessness. She sat down. She didn't look at Leo. She locked her eyes on me. You look tired, Mother, I said calmly. You think you've won, she spat. Her voice was raspy. You think because you have a few papers and a lawyer that you can destroy this family? I didn't destroy the family, I said. I just turned on the lights. You're the one who let the rot set in. I gave you life, she hissed. And I gave that creature life. You should be thanking me. You were too busy with your blueprints and your career to give us an heir. Isabella couldn't do it. Someone had to ensure the legacy continued. Legacy. I leaned forward, my hands clasped on the cold steel table. Is that what you call it, stealing my eggs? Creating a child to be a prop, and then throwing her away when a better version came along? That's not a legacy, Mother. That's a eugenics experiment. She served her purpose, Patricia said coldly. She kept Isabella happy. She gave us hope, but she's flawed. You notice the eyes, the heterochromia. It's a genetic marker, a mutation. We didn't want a mutant carrying the Hart name. I felt a surge of violence so pure it frightened me. I wanted to reach across the table and shake her until her teeth rattled. But I breathed. I was an architect. I needed structure. You said you had medical information, I said. Tell me. Patricia smiled. It was the smile of a shark sensing blood. Drop the lawsuit. Unfreeze the assets. Tell the DA you exaggerated the kidnapping claim. Get us out of here, and I'll give you the file. What file? The donor file, she whispered. You didn't think we just used any sperm donor, did you? We chose carefully, but there were complications, genetic markers, things that might pop up when she's 10 or 20. You need that file, Maya, and only I know where it is. She was bluffing, or she wasn't. It didn't matter. I couldn't negotiate with a terrorist. Nope, I said. Patricia's smile faltered. What? No deal, I said, standing up. I don't need your file. I have Dr. Aris. Leo is cutting a deal with him right now. Full immunity in exchange for the complete medical records, including the donor profile. He's terrified of prison, Mother. He's singing like a bird. He already told us the donor was a Rhodes Scholar med student. He told us about the screening. I leaned down, bringing my face inches from hers. I don't need you. I never needed you. That was your biggest fear, wasn't it? That I was the one child you couldn't control, and now I'm the one holding the keys. Maya, please, she cracked. The arrogance vanished, replaced by sudden pathetic desperation. It's prison. I can't do prison. The food, the people, they're animals. I'm your mother. You're not a mother, I said, turning away. You're just an egg donor. I walked to the door. Maya, she screamed, slamming her hands on the glass partition. She'll resent you. She'll grow up and realize she was a mistake. She's broken just like you. I didn't look back. I walked out of the jail into the bright, harsh sunlight of the parking lot. I took a deep breath, inhaling the exhaust fumes and the freedom. "Did Aris actually give up the donor info?" Leo asked as we walked to his car. "He will," I said. "Make the call." The next few weeks were a lesson in reconstruction. I stopped trying to be the perfect architect and started learning to be a mother. Lily was resilient, but she was damaged. She hoarded food. I found granola bars hidden under her pillow and apples stuffed in her shoes. She was afraid to speak loudly. She asked permission to use the bathroom in her own home. One night, a week after the arrest, a thunderstorm hit Seattle. Thunder shook the penthouse. I was in my study reviewing the restraining orders Leo had finalized when I heard a scream. I ran to Lily's room. She was sitting up in bed, screaming, her eyes wide but unseeing. A night terror. No, I'll be good. Don't put me in the dark. Grandma, don't put me in the dark." My heart shattered. I climbed into the bed, gathering her small, sweaty body into my arms. She thrashed, fighting me. "It's okay." I shushed her, rocking her back and forth. "It's Maya, it's Mommy. You're not in the dark. Look at the light." I pointed to the nightlight, a glowing moon I had bought her. "The moon is here," I whispered, "and I am here. The bad people are gone, Lily. They are locked away in a cage where they can never, ever touch you." She woke up slowly, her breathing ragged. She looked at me, her mismatched eyes searching my face for a lie. "Are they really in a cage?" she whispered. "Yes," I said fiercely. "A strong cage, with iron bars, and they don't have the key. Only I have the key, and I threw it in the ocean." She rested her head on my chest. "Grandma said I was a mistake." "Grandma was wrong," I said, stroking her hair. "You know what a blueprint is?" She shook her head. "It's a plan," I explained. "Before you build a beautiful building, you draw it. You plan every line. You were my blueprint, Lily. I didn't know I was drawing you, but my heart knew. You are exactly perfectly designed." She fell asleep, holding my hand. I stayed there all night, watching the rain hit the window, plotting the final phase of my plan. The legal battle was turning into a siege. My parents were fighting dirty, even from behind bars. They were burning through their remaining liquid cash to hire defense attorneys who specialized in impossible cases. They were launching a PR campaign to smear me. But they forgot one thing. I was an architect. I knew how to find the structural weakness. I called Leo the next morning. "The asset seizure," I said. "The house. What about it?" "It's in a trust right, but the trust has a clause about moral turpitude regarding the trustees. If the trustees are charged with a felony, the beneficiaries can petition to dissolve the trust and take control of the assets to protect the estate." Leo was silent for a moment. I could hear him smiling. "You want to trigger the moral turpitude clause, Maya? That's nuclear. You'd be evicting them from their own home before they are even convicted. They aren't living there," I said cold. "They're in jail, and I don't want the house to sit empty. I want to liquidate it. I want to sell it and put every penny into a trust for Lily. Restitution." "It's aggressive," Leo said. "I love it. But to do it, we need the other beneficiary to agree." "Isabella," I said. "She's out of the hospital," Leo said. "Mark kicked her out. She's staying at a cheap hotel downtown. She has no money, no husband, and the baby is in foster care pending the investigation. She's desperate." "Set up a meeting," I said. "I'm going to make my sister an offer she can't refuse." The meeting was in a neutral location, a coffee shop near the courthouse. Isabella walked in. She looked like a ghost. She had lost 20 pounds. Her hair was limp. She wore sunglasses to hide her swollen eyes. She wore jeans and a sweatshirt, no more couture. She sat down opposite me. She didn't order anything. "What do you want?" she muttered. "You took my husband. You took my baby. You put Mom and Dad in jail. Are you here to gloat?" "I didn't take your baby, Isabella," I said. "CPS took him because you were arrested for child endangerment, and Mark left you because you're a liar." She flinched. "I didn't know they stole your eggs, I swear. Mom told me. She told me she found a donor who looked like us. I just wanted a baby Maya. You don't know what it's like. Trying for 10 years, feeling like a failure. So you bought one," I said. And when you got a refund, you threw the receipt away. I loved her." Isabella cried, tears leaking from under her glasses. "In my own way. But Mom, she said Lily was off. She said she would hurt the brand. I was scared of Mom Maya. You know how she is." "I do," I said. "That's why I left. You stayed. You chose the money over your soul." I slid a document across the table. "What is this?" she asked. "It's a petition to dissolve the family trust," I said. "If we both sign it as the sole beneficiaries, we can liquidate the estate, the house, the cars, the art, everything." "But Mom and Dad are going to prison for 20 years, I said. "They don't need a mansion, but you need money, don't you? Mark cut you off. You have legal bills. You have no home." Isabella looked at the paper. Hunger warred with fear in her face. "If we sell," I said, "the proceeds are split. 50% to me, 50% to you. But my 50% goes into an irrevocable trust for Lily. And out of your 50%, you pay me back the child support for the 5 years you pretended to be a mother." "That leaves me with almost nothing," she protested. "It leaves you with enough to rent an apartment and pay a lawyer to try and get your son back," I said. "Or you can refuse. The bank will foreclose on the house because Mom can't pay the mortgage from jail. You get nothing, and you stay homeless." Isabella looked at me. She saw the same eyes she had seen in the mirror her whole life, but mine were harder, stronger. "You really hate us," she whispered. "I don't hate you," I said. "I just don't care about you. I care about the little girl you threw away." Isabella picked up the pen. Her hand shook. She signed the death warrant of the Hart estate. "Done," she whispered, sliding it back. Can I see her, Lily, just once to say goodbye?" I looked at my sister, broken, pathetic, and still selfish. "No," I said, standing up and taking the paper. "You aren't her mother. You never were. You were just her babysitter, and you were fired for negligence." I walked out of the coffee shop. Leo was waiting in the car. "Did she sign?" he asked. I held up the paper. "The house is ours." "What are you going to do with it?" "Sell it," I said. "But first, I'm going to let Lily paint the walls." The final piece of the puzzle fell into place a week later. The sale of the house was expedited. The buyers were a tech couple from California who wanted to tear it down and build something modern. Perfect. But before the keys were handed over, I took Lily to the estate one last time. It was empty now. The furniture had been auctioned. The art was gone. It was just a shell. We walked into the grand foyer. Lily held my hand tight. "This is the scary house," she whispered. "It's just a house," I said. "And it's not scary anymore. It's empty." I pulled a can of spray paint out of my bag, bright neon pink. "What's that?" she asked. "This," I said, shaking the can, the metal ball rattling like a war drum, "is magic. Do you want to write your name on the wall?" Her eyes went wide. "Grandma would be mad." "Grandma isn't here," I said, "and this is our wall now." I sprayed a big, messy heart on the pristine cream wallpaper. Lily gasped. Then she giggled. "Here," I handed her the can. "Your turn." She took it with 2 hands. She aimed at the wall. She sprayed a shaky line, then a circle, then she started to laugh. Real deep belly laughs. We spent an hour destroying the interior of the house that had been my prison and her dungeon. We painted flowers in the dining room. We wrote, "Lily was here," in giant letters in the living room. We reclaimed the space by ruining it. When we walked out covered in paint, the sun was setting. The house stood behind us, a rotting monument to a dead dynasty. "I'm hungry," Lily said, wiping a streak of pink paint from her nose. "Me too," I said. "What do you want?" "Pizza," she said, "with extra cheese." "Done," I said. We got in the car. As we drove away, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I looked forward. The storm was over. The cleanup was done. Now, finally, the construction could begin. I had my daughter. I had my life. And I had the absolute unwavering certainty that I would never, ever be like them. But the story wasn't quite over. There was one loose end, one final act of justice required to make sure the door stayed closed forever. The sentencing hearing was set for next month, and I had one final speech to give. The morning of the sentencing hearing was bright, crisp, and deceptively normal. It was the kind of Tuesday that usually signaled site visits and client meetings, but today it signaled the end of an era. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my new master bedroom, a temporary rental, while the estate sale was finalized, and adjusted the collar of my charcoal gray suit. I looked like an architect ready to unveil a masterpiece. In a way, I was. The destruction of the Hart dynasty had been my most complex project, and today was the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Lily sat on the edge of the bed swinging her legs. She was wearing a dress covered in yellow daisies and brand-new sneakers that lit up when she stomped. She wasn't the terrified, silent ghost I had picked up from the school a month ago. She was louder now. She took up space. "Are you going to the big building?" she asked, stomping one foot to watch the heel flash pink. "Yes," I said, turning to face her. "The big building where the judge lives." "Are the bad people going to be there?" "Yes," I said, honestly. "But they will be in chains, and they can't see you. You're going to stay with Sarah." Sarah was the nanny I had hired, a warm, capable woman who actually liked children, unlike the staff my parents had employed. "Tell them..." Lily paused, screwing up her face in concentration. "Tell them I don't want the astronaut pajamas anymore. I outgrew them." I smiled, a genuine warmth spreading through my chest. "I'll tell them." Leo picked me up in his sedan. He looked grim but focused. "The DA is confident," he said as we merged onto the highway toward the courthouse. "The plea deal fell apart because your father couldn't stop running his mouth to his cellmate. He tried to solicit a hit on Dr. Eris, added a conspiracy to commit murder charge to the pile. He's done Maya. He's never seeing the outside of a cell. And my mother... She's playing the victim card until the bitter end," Leo said. "She's claiming coercive control by your father, but the emails about disposing of the prototype were sent from her personal iPad. The jury didn't buy it. Today is just about the numbers." The courthouse was surrounded by media vans. The story of the high society baby theft had gone national. It had everything the tabloids loved: wealth, betrayal, a secret clone child, and a vengeful sister. I walked through the throng of reporters with my head high, ignoring the microphones shoved in my face. I wasn't here for fame. I was here for closure. The courtroom was packed. I took my seat in the front row behind the prosecutor. To my right sat the empty space where my family used to be. To my left, the jury box. Then the bailiff announced, "All rise." They brought them in. Robert Hart, once the titan of Seattle real estate, shuffled in, wearing a beige jumpsuit, his hands shackled to his waist. He had lost 30 pounds. His skin was gray, his hair thinning and unkempt. He looked like a man whose soul had been repossessed. Patricia followed. She had tried to maintain some dignity, holding her chin up, but the effect was ruined by the shackles and the lack of Botox. Her face had collapsed into a map of bitterness. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on me. There was no love there, only hate and fear. Isabella wasn't there. She had given a deposition from her hospital bed and fled the state the moment she was discharged. She was hiding in a rental in Arizona, living off the scraps of the trust settlement I had forced her to sign. She was a single mother now, disowned by society, trying to raise a son she hadn't planned for without the money she had worshipped. Judge Holloway took the bench. He was a stern man who had presided over the asset seizure. He looked at my parents with unmasked disdain. "We are here for sentencing in the matter of the people versus Robert and Patricia Hart," Holloway said. "The defendants have been found guilty on all counts: kidnapping in the first-degree medical fraud conspiracy and child abandonment. Before I pass sentence, does the victim wish to speak?" The prosecutor nodded at me. I stood up. My legs felt like steel columns. I walked to the podium. I didn't bring notes. I didn't need them. "Your Honor." I began, my voice clear and steady in the silent room. For 28 years, I thought I was the disappointment of the Hart family. I thought I was the cold one, the unfeeling one, the one who cared more about buildings than people. My parents told me this. They told the world this. I looked at Patricia. She flinched. "But 6 years ago." I continued. They proved who the real monsters were. They didn't just steal my genetic material. They didn't just commit a crime against my body. They committed a crime against a soul. They created a life my daughter Lily solely to serve as a placeholder, a prop, a spare part for their golden child. I gripped the sides of the podium. They raised her in a closet. They taught her she was disposable, and when she became inconvenient, they threw her away like garbage. They left a 5-year-old child at a school with strangers, terrified and alone, hoping she would disappear into the foster system so they could pretend their perfect family remained unblemished. I turned to face my parents. Robert was staring at the floor. Patricia was weeping silent, angry tears. "You failed," I said directly to them. "You tried to erase me, and instead you replicated me. You tried to break me, and instead you gave me the greatest gift of my life. You gave me a daughter who is resilient and kind and brave, everything you are not." I turned back to the judge. They had money. They had power. They had every advantage in the world, and they used it to hurt a child. I don't ask for mercy, Your Honor. I ask for the architectural equivalent of a demolition. I ask that you tear their lives down to the foundation, just as they tried to do to mine. I sat down. The silence in the courtroom was heavy, suffocating. Judge Holloway adjusted his glasses. He looked at my parents. "Robert Hart, Patricia Hart," he said, his voice booming. "The callousness of your crimes is staggering. You treated a human life as a commodity. You have shown no remorse, only regret that you were caught." He picked up his gavel. "I sentence you both to 25 years in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole for at least 20. Furthermore, the court upholds the complete liquidation of your assets to pay restitution to the victim, Lily Hart, in the amount of $15 million. The gavel slammed down. Bang. The sound was louder than a gunshot. It was the sound of a door slamming shut forever. Patricia screamed, "No, you can't. Maya, tell them I'm your mother." I stood up and turned my back on her. I walked out of the courtroom as the bailiffs dragged them away. I didn't look back. Not once. Outside, the air tasted sweeter. Leo was waiting by the car. He gave me a rare, unreserved smile. 25 years, he said. "They'll die in there." "Good," I said. "Now take me to the beach." 1 year later. The ocean breeze in Westport is different than the city air. It smells of salt and wild grass. It smells of clean slates. I sat on the deck of the house I had bought with a fraction of the restitution money. It wasn't a mansion. It was a modern glass-fronted A-frame overlooking the Pacific. It was open light and filled with the sound of waves. Lily was in the garden. She was 6 now. She had lost her first tooth last week. She was wearing overalls and was covered in dirt. She was planting strawberries. "Mommy!" she yelled, waving a trowel. "I found a worm. He's huge." "Don't eat him," I yelled back, laughing. "I won't. I'm making him a house." I took a sip of my tea. My life was unrecognizable from the one I had led a year ago. I still ran my firm, but I worked remotely 3 days a week. I designed playgrounds now and community centers and library spaces for people, not just monuments to ego. I heard a car pull up the gravel drive. Leo. He stepped out of his convertible holding a box of donuts and a stack of legal files. He walked up to the deck looking relaxed in jeans and a t-shirt. Uncle Leo, Lily screamed, abandoning the worm and running to tackle him. Leo caught her, swinging her around. "Hey, monster, did you grow again? I swear you're taller than you were on Tuesday." "I ate my vegetables," she proclaimed proudly. "Disgusting," Leo said, setting her down. He walked over to me and kissed my cheek. "Hey, partner." "Hey," I said. "News. The sale of the Highlands estate finally closed," Leo said, sitting down and opening a file. "The tech couple. They bulldozed it yesterday." I felt a phantom weight lift off my shoulders. "It's gone." "Flattened," Leo said. "They sent a video. It took about 3 hours to knock the whole thing down. The site is just dirt now." "Good," I said. "Let the earth breathe." And Leo hesitated, pulling out a smaller envelope. A letter came to the firm from Arizona. Isabella. I looked at the envelope. It was cheap paper. The handwriting was shaky. "Do you want to read it?" Leo asked. I took the envelope. I held it for a moment, weighing the past against the present. I thought about Isabella raising a son alone in a desert stripped of her titles, her money, and her family. I thought about the hate in her eyes at the baby shower. I stood up and walked to the fire pit at the edge of the deck. I struck a match. "Maya," Leo asked. "She made her choice," I said, lighting the corner of the envelope. "She chose the lie. I chose the truth." I dropped the burning letter into the pit. We watched it curl into ash, the black flakes floating up into the sea breeze. "Lily," I called out. She ran over breathless and happy, her mismatched eyes shining like jewels. "Yeah, Mom." "Come here," I said. I pulled her into my lap. She smelled of earth and strawberries and ocean air. She didn't smell like lavender detergent anymore. She smelled like herself. "Leo brought donuts," I said. Yes, she punched the air. As we sat there, the three of us, a lawyer, an architect, and a little girl who had defied the odds, I realized that the golden rule of my family had been wrong. Transformation wasn't about becoming someone else to please a parent. Transformation was about stripping away the false layers until you found the solid structure underneath. My parents had wanted a legacy. They wanted immortality. But as I looked at Lily laughing as she argued with Leo about which donut was best, I knew they had failed. They were rotting in a concrete box. Their mansion was dust. Their names were cautionary tales whispered in Seattle salons. But me, I was building. I looked directly at the camera, breaking the fourth wall for the final time. You know, for the longest time, I thought an architect's job was to design beautiful cages. I looked at my parents' estate, that massive, pristine, hollow mansion, and I thought that was what success looked like. Rigid lines, manicured lawns, everything perfectly controlled, everything serving an image. I didn't realize until I looked into Lily's mismatched eyes that I was looking at the cracks in their foundation. This story wasn't just about a custody battle or a frozen asset account. It wasn't even really about the money. It was about the terrifying realization that some people, even the people who share your DNA view, love as a transaction. My parents and my sister didn't see Lily as a child. They saw her as an accessory. They saw her as a spare part to fix a gap in their picture-perfect life. And when she didn't fit the aesthetic, they tried to return her. But here is the lesson I want you to take away from this. You are not a reflection of your family's inability to love you. If you are the scapegoat, the black sheep, or the difficult one because you refuse to play along with a toxic narrative, please understand that your rebellion is your greatest strength. My parents called me cold and ambitious, like they were insults. They tried to use my career against me. But in the end, those were the very tools I used to save my daughter. The coldness was actually boundaries. The ambition was actually the drive to build a safe harbor. We often hear that blood is thicker than water, but the full quote is actually, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." The family you choose, the Leos who fight for you, the Sarahs who care for your children, the friends who show up when you have nothing to offer but a messy, paint-covered life that is your real foundation. My parents tried to build a legacy on lies, fraud, and image, and like any structure built on sand, it collapsed the moment the storm hit. Today their mansion is dirt, but this house, this small, messy house full of worms and strawberries and loud sneakers, this is built on truth, and truth is the only thing that lasts. So, if you are currently living in a house of lies, I hope this story gives you the sledgehammer you need to break down the walls. You don't have to stay in a room where you are tolerated but not celebrated. You can walk out. You can build something new. You can be the architect of your own joy. Maya smiles a genuine warm expression that reaches her eyes. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but silence is how they win, and I'm done being silent. If you want to see another example of a daughter who had to tear down an empire to find her freedom, click the video on your screen right now. It's the story of a woman whose billionaire father tried to buy her silence, but she found something in his safe that changed everything. Trust me, the ending is even more satisfying than you think. And listen, we are building a community here, a chosen family of our own. If you believe in justice, in breaking cycles, and in standing up for the innocent, please hit that subscribe button and share this video. Share it for the scapegoats. Share it for the survivors. Share it so that the algorithm knows that the truth matters more than the image. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep building.